See? And that's the answer. Because in all of the schooling, in all of the news media, in all of the publications, this is never mentioned because the Federal Reserve System doesn't like it. Got it? And if it doesn't like it, you don't see it. But aren't you glad we don't have censorship in this country? Whew. Oh boy, you see? This thing is run entirely for the benefit of our lender. This is not good for the lender, and that's why you don't learn it. Okay? Now, how we get out of this thing is we learn some things. Is this fun? We learn some things, okay? Now, remember Paul Warburg back there? He said, well, we're going to set up two kinds of people, guys with business, guys with jobs. Okay, what he did was he designed two kinds of forms. Okay, so we're learning that there's two kinds of people. There's a business and there is a job. Okay, now, what is the difference, basically? Well, let's take a look at this. First of all, we're going to define what a business is. And I like to be very basic in my definitions. It reminds me of the football coach. Every spring practice, he'd hold, the first thing he would do every spring practice out in the field, he'd hold up a football and he'd say, gentlemen, this is a football. And finally, one guy showed up in the last row and he said, hold it, coach. He said, not so fast. Okay, so we're gonna try not to go too fast this morning. Okay. Okay, what is a business? Okay, now I'm going to spare you the agony of my opinions. I'm not even going to read what Webster says because we don't care. Here's what the Congress tells us a business is because it writes the IRS, the Internal Revenue Code, the IRC. See, notice this, Internal Revenue Code equals law. Okay, it's written by Congress. It's important to understand these things. IRS represents an interpretation. Okay? And it's called regulation. Get the difference? That's what they think the law says, but they're not sure because it hasn't been to court yet. They don't want their definitions to go to court because it may change. Because they make most of their money down here. They don't make it up here. Now, the reason that okay, you've heard of tax attorneys. You can't even find them in the yellow page. What are tax attorneys? Well, tax attorneys work for corporations. And they tell the president how to operate up here. You don't want to work by IRS opinion. You're going to come out on the short end of the stick, aren't you? But yet all we ever see in H&R block classes, we call it preparation H&R, okay, and all these things, all you hear is that they teach this. They're really not teaching this. You see? Now, in order to be free, you got to know what the truth is. That's what Jesus said. Shall know the truth, truth to make you free, okay? You didn't know he was talking about IRS, did you? Okay? Now, so what happens here is he was way ahead of his time. Okay, so what happens here is that, yes, we have to go back to the source. We have to see what in the world are these definitions, because we know what Orwell says, that, you know, definition benefits the powers that be. Remember, if you print the money, it's called counterfeiting, and if the bank prints it, it's called inflation. See, the definition is not what's being done, it's who's doing it. Oh boy, he calls this doublespeak or doublethink. See, and he was a dyed-in-the-wool communist or a socialist, okay? And he said, now listen, it's important where Orwell's coming from because he's not a very positive type of guy. He said on his deathbed that the history of man, or the future of man, because he didn't believe there was any solution to this, the history of man under socialism is a man's face with a boot on it. And that's what we have to look forward to. That's what he had to look forward to. Well, thankfully, he didn't know everything, okay? Because I don't think he'd ever read the Bible, okay? But, you see, that's what you look at when you just look at what IRS says. Because that's exactly what they're talking about, okay? We're going to go to the law. And we're going to talk about the difference here between the two later on here. Okay, remember, the regulation is just simply their interpretation. Well, I can have I could actually print a regulation and go and say, here's what my regulation says. It'd be just as good as theirs, wouldn't it? Because neither one of them went through Congress. Get it? Now, the world is living under this interpretation, and it's wrong. And most of the time, it's wrong. Okay? So, going under the law now, the law says that a business is any endeavor that has a profit motive and economic activity. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that you're trying to make money, and you've either spent some money or you made some money or both. Well, that's not too hard. Now, the regulation comes along. Now, what they're saying now in the regulation are the things like you have to make a profit 3 out of 5 years. Well, notice the law doesn't say that. And as a result, we see some interesting things. Lockheed, for example, hasn't made a net profit since 1938. IRS has not declared it a hobby. See, you say, how can that be? Well, they have a tax department. and they know what they operate under the America 1, which is the law. America 2 is the regulation. Get the picture? Which country do you want to belong to? It's up to you. The control comes from within you, but the education system is designed to make it so you don't have the option, because if you don't ever hear of anything, you don't have the option. A guy named Perry once said it's impossible to be ignorant and free at the same time, because if you don't know what the options are, you can't be free. The public education in this country is make sure you have no options. Okay? Now, if I taught this class over here at USC, well, I'd be thrown out, because the function of that college president is to make sure no education occurs on the premises, isn't it? That's his job. What college president's ever been fired because the education was poor? I mean, it's only if it's too much, right? If he's radical, you see, that's too much information. Shows up as radical, rad. Okay? Okay, so they operate on these regulations. Well, okay, we don't want to operate. For United Airlines, for example. This is incredible. United Airlines, okay? Since 1947 has not made a profit. We're talking, what, 44 years? These guys have been operating an airline in the red. How can you operate for 44 years an airline that doesn't make any money? The answer is Joe Lunchbucket gives them his taxes. It's called a subsidy. Well, you'd think these guys were friendly, wouldn't you? Okay, so notice what we're learning here. See, these guys have been running this airline on other people's money. Well, hey, it's called taxes, you see? Now, here's the thing. I flew down yesterday on Pan Am. Pan Am's an interesting airline. Pan Am, now listen, is being bought by United. Now, how can a company that hasn't made any money for 40 years buy another airline? Some things they didn't teach us at Harvard, huh? Get the picture? These boys don't ever operate at a profit. That's the last thing you ever want to do. Isn't that fun? Got it? Okay, because if they got a profit, they simply buy another airline. Whoops, in the red again. Well, more subsidies. See? And this is where our money goes. This is incredible. Okay, now, profit motive economic activity. All right, let's take a look at this now, because there's two forms. One for the guy with the business and one for the guy with the job. Because these forms were invented by Paul Warburg. If you take a look at the first form in 1913, it's totally intelligible. You can recognize it instantly because it looks so much like the form in 1990s. And also the form in the 2000s. And the form in 2003, when all private property will be confiscated except for the 5%. Because that's what it's coming down to. You got your choice. Which boat you want to ride on? You want the Titanic or you want the life raft? Titanic's a lot more popular, more people on it. Okay. Do not be in the band, because they played Nearer My God to Thee as the ship sank. Okay. Okay. Now, what happens here? Okay, you had a form called 1040. Okay, here's the 1040 form. You've probably seen one before. That was the year the Talmud was written. Oh, get in back. Okay, now, so what happens here? You dirty dog. Now, so what we have here is wages. Okay, $50,000. Okay, if you don't have any adjustments, then the adjusted gross is going to be $50,000. Not too hard to figure out, is it? The reverse side over here goes something like this. You have this $50,000 carried forward, and now you have your deductions. You've got your exemptions. Let's say you're married, you got your standard deductions, $5,200. You've got your exemptions. Let's say there's 4 in the family, and there's 20/50 times 4. This changes every year, but you're looking at what, about $9,000 or something like this. Okay, now you've got $13,200 here that you deduct from your $50,000, which gives you something like $36,800. And your tax on that now for federal and state is going to be about $10,000. Not bad, is it? See, that's what the average guy's tax return looks like, something in that area. Okay? Now, if you have a job. Now, if on the other hand you have a business, then you have, remember it had an extra box? Well, the extra box comes with an extra form. Sort of like Cracker Jacks, you open this box up, boom, another form. And we have here what's called a Schedule C, Schedule D, Schedule E, Schedule F, Schedule K, all these different schedules called Schedule C. Name and address of your business. It doesn't take long for this pen to run out. I think what these pens need to do is sit upright. That would be better. I think there's ink in, it's just at the other end. Now, so we have here income. Okay, here's the income that this business makes. And it has expenses, doesn't it? You have expenses. And we have net. So let's assume you start a business and you actually make $3,000. How much money could you spend? Well, you had the $3,000 from your business you could spend, and theoretically you had the $50,000 from your job you could spend, right? Because they work together. Now let's suppose you didn't really spend all of your money. Let's just assume here that you spent, well, let's pick a number at random. Let's say you spent $39,800. And you subtract your 3 from that, and it's $36,800, isn't it? You had a loss. Is that right? Something like that? Is that right? Yeah, something like that. Okay, I never was good at math. I could never figure it out. I could only figure out taxes. Okay, now, so what we have here is your business now. Okay, your business now, what does it have? It has a loss of $36,800. Now, I got to ask you a quick question. If you made $50,000, is it conceivable you could have spent 36 of it? See, we're not asking you to do anything you didn't do last year, are we? Only we're asking you to account for it differently. Instead of having personal expense, because you remember your Schedule A says personal itemized expenses? Oh, bad. Have Schedule C, business expense. The power is in the C. Okay? Don't go to Schedule A. Okay, now what happens? Okay, this changes. So now what have you got? You got something like $13,200, don't you? Can you see what's coming? Okay, you got $13,200. Now you subtract from that your $13,200, and that comes out something like 0. And your tax on that is 0. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Got it? It's no more complicated than second grade magic. It's about as complicated as that. And some people won't believe me. We went to a meeting last night, a mortgage meeting. I loved his approach. He says, some people aren't going to believe you can get an interest-free mortgage. He says, for those of you who don't believe it, we have a plan for you. It's to go out the rest of your life and pay interest. See, if you don't believe this, that's fine, because all that means is that you're going to pay tax the rest of your life. That really doesn't do me any harm. But it does my grandkids a lot of harm, because you're funding the system that puts them in the funny farm, okay? So to make sure my grandchildren don't have any problem, I'm out here talking to you, because the only way my grandchildren will be free is if you're free. I got that one figured out. See, it's like a torch. You have to pass it on. See? If I pass this on enough, I can look my grandkids in the eye and say, hey, kid, did it for you. Okay, now, okay, my grandkids, they're 8 and 10. They're not quite sure what I'm doing yet. But they will figure it out someday, I hope. Okay, because this is how you pass freedom on, as the Bible says, to your children and your children's children. You're supposed to give an inheritance. What type of inheritance are we giving them with all this debt? It's a negative. You know, one of the most gross anti-family things I've ever seen, and I know it's done in jest, is this bumper sticker, I'm spending my children's inheritance. This is as anti-biblical as you can be, because that's exactly the opposite of God's plan for his creatures. It's exactly the opposite. You see, because this is what happened in Israel in the old days, that there was an alienation between the children and their parents, and the whole nation collapsed. And one of the marks of the Messiah, as Malachi talks about, is he's going to restore the fathers to the children. This restoration takes place, you see, because right now we are not only not giving our children anything, we're piling debt on them. I mean, what a horrible thing to do to our children. The worst thing imaginable. I mean, we wouldn't think about going down and getting some poisonous toy for him. We're giving him something worse. You see, and then they make a joke out of it. We're spending their inheritance. Ha ha. It's nauseating. It's just the opposite of what should be going on the planet. Exactly the opposite, you see. This thing is exactly the opposite of God's plan. You don't know where that comes from. Hey, this comes right out of the pits of hell. I'm totally convinced of it. See? Now, the way that you fight it is you expose it. 2 requirements of a conspiracy. It must be secret. It must be illegal. It was against the Constitution. It was secret. Qualifies in my book as a conspiracy. Okay. The way that you get rid of it is you illuminate it. You expose it. Because it can't exist if it's not secret. Is this fun? It can only exist as long as you don't understand it and your neighbor doesn't understand it, then he'll pay it. See, we call it an ignorance tax. It's really not an income tax. You can make a lot of income and not pay it if you know something.